Omnia Consulting, lokales Arbeitsteam, internationale Erfahrung.
Okay. Sustainability. Yeah. When we talk about sustainability, many people refer just to the environmental element of sustainability. However, it's much more than that. I think sustainability forms into three categories. I can hear an echo in my headphones, please, if you can turn that off.
Nosotros oímos perfectamente, Steve.
Okay. First of all, environmental sustainability. Thanks. Okay. In return for the loans that the government have given, the bailouts to airlines and tour operators, they have requested that companies embrace more environmentalism and put in place measures to reduce their green footprint. And this couldn't have really come at a worse time. In the European airline community, we are spending more and more time on environmental issues. And this is for companies whose finances are under strain. Our balance sheets have been shot to pieces. We've got reduced cash balances, and we're asked to spend an enormous amount of money on environmental projects. Now, I'm not against environmental projects. In fact, I'm very much for them and for reducing our footprint. But there is a trend at the moment where the environmental agenda is being pushed very, very hard at a time when airlines, tour operators, hotels have very, very challenging financial situations. And I think the governments need to be aware of that. I would suggest we repair our finances, repair our balance sheets, and then get on to environmental issues. In terms of sustainability, I think there's two other categories. One is financial sustainability. Companies are under massive pressure at the moment, and some companies won't make it. Some will go under because they don't have the cash balances to continue. So from a sustainability point of view, we need to make sure that we have sufficient financial support for the industry, or the industry will be massively reduced. The other thing is corporate sustainability, and we need to make sure that we operate very much as a community. So some companies in the UK in particular have not been refunding customers. They've been holding on to money and not refunding customers when holidays have been cancelled, and this is giving the industry a very bad image, which is affecting the future of the industry, and that isn't really a sustainable way to continue. Some, I won't mention names, but some multinational vertically integrated tour operators are not paying their hotel partners until next year. That's not sustainable. We need to work as a global community to get travel back on its feet, and as the actions of some companies certainly not helping that. And when we talk about sustainability and undiscovered areas in destinations, etc., I accept there are some undiscovered destinations. Very often there's a reason they're undiscovered, but we have to be careful that we don't alienate and abandon huge elements of the holiday population. I know there is projects to regenerate areas in the south of Mallorca around the Magaluf, Playa de Palma areas. I support that, and if we can change the nature of tourism, that's fine. But we have to be careful that we don't alienate the hundreds of thousands of customers that currently go to those resorts. I think it has to be a case of evolution rather than revolution. Otherwise, we will all have big holes in our budgets, big drops in our occupancies and load factors. So I think the sustainability part plays into the redevelopment of some resorts. It has to be done in a responsible manner because people will go where they want to go for the product they want. And I think we have to work together very closely to make sure that this is done properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, primero Steve y luego Carlos y al final cambiaremos. Steve, para ti primero esta. ¿Crees que es más importante la existencia de un protocolo paneuropeo que permita a los turistas moverse entre las diferentes regiones? ¿Creéis? ¿O bien es mejor esperar lo posible a que exista una vacuna o exista algún tipo de solución para que realmente se restablezcan los flujos con cierta naturalidad?
I think there should be very much a European protocol. Yes, we could wait for a vaccine, but it may not arrive. There's a vaccine being worked on by Oxford Laboratories and AstraZeneca. There's one being worked on by Pfizer, but it may be some time. I mean, we've waited several hundred years, if not millennia, for a cure for cancer. It's not here. There's many other diseases for which a vaccine hasn't been created. So I think to wait for a vaccine, which may make some time, and may be discovered to have unanticipated side effects. The reason why drugs take years, if not decades, to produce is because they have to run long-term trials to see what the side effects are. I mean, it wouldn't be very good if people took a vaccine and they all went blind after 5 years. That would be not a good outcome. So I think we've got to expect that a vaccine may take a number of years to produce. Therefore, in the absence of a vaccine, governments have to work together. And it needs a European framework for the opening and closing of air corridors, a European framework for the categorization and measurement of infection levels, and a European framework for testing. When one is traveling from one country to another, we need a robust testing mechanism in place. Now, the fact we're part of a European Union that is supposed to consist of 28 countries working together, one might think that that was a good thing, but things seem to be happening very slowly. In fact, I've seen glaciers move quicker than we are at the moment. So I would urge European politicians to come together and to work on the 3 elements that I outlined and put these in place to get travel moving again. We have to get travel moving again. Economies are getting worse and worse, and I think at the moment we are heading for quite a severe European recession. If things aren't put in place quickly, we may not get a recession, we may get a depression. And whilst I accept that there is lots of things being done to combat COVID, in some countries in the UK, for example, there is delays to cancer treatment to ring-fence resources for COVID. There are routine and sometimes quite major operations being cancelled. You can't get an appointment at the doctor's. Levels of depression are rising because people are housebound. Levels of suicides are up. People dying from diseases that were normally very easily treated are dying. So we have to put this into perspective and come up very quickly with a set of protocols that can get Europe moving again. Otherwise, we will go back to the dark ages. And I don't think any of us want that. We need a little bit of perspective here, and we need solutions that will allow the world to continue whilst protecting the vulnerable. Thank you.
Ian, Carlos.
In terms of what people want, I think first of all, people want things to be like they used to be. People continually talk about the new normal. Well, they don't want a new normal, they want the old normal back. They don't want to, for the rest of their lives, walk around with a face mask on and stand 2 meters apart from people and sanitize their hands every 15 seconds. They want the old normal. And unfortunately, with the pandemic the way it is, it's very difficult to provide a holiday that is like the ones they experienced previously. First of all, people want certainty. They don't want to travel abroad with a chance that they might be tested positive and have to go into quarantine. We can't, as an industry, give them that. When they go on holiday, they want to feel like they're on holiday. They want to relax. They want to do what they want, when they want. They don't want to be told where to go, told to put the mask on. They don't want to have all these restrictions. They want to go on holiday and not feel like they're starring in the Shawshank Redemption, which things might end up like that if we have to mandate lots and lots of restrictions, etc., for customers. So although we have to have protocols in place, they've got to be as light touch as possible. They have to be very unrestricted for the customers and try not to take away their holiday enjoyment. Secondly, I think customers will be forgiving of some disruption to the holiday or some minor processes in place. However, that has to be delivered sensitively. We have to have enough staff around to help. In the current climate, customers have lots and lots of questions. Customers are frightened. Customers are insecure. Customers are wondering what's going to happen all the time. We need to have staff around. As I said, we have increased the number of staff we've got. We have no intention of replacing our staff with apps. We will have real people with real heads and real voices on the ground to help our customers out. They want to be treated with respect and not treated like cattle, and not have people shouting across at them what they should or shouldn't do. I was in a supermarket the other day and I forgot to put my mask on. And some supermarket worker just shouted, "Mask!" at me. And I thought, how rude is that? Why don't you just say, "Would you mind putting your mask on, please, sir?" So I think we've got to make sure that we don't become too obsessed with rules and regulations and too officious and make people's holiday a misery. And most importantly, we've got to make people feel safe. So we have to put in place the protocols that we have to do, but they have to be as light touch as possible, as undisruptive as possible to customers, and done in a very polite way. We have to take customers with us. Things have to change, hopefully on a temporary basis, not a permanent basis, but we have to take people with us. When we want to affect change in our companies, you do it a lot better if you tell people why you're doing things, you do it in the right way, you get buy-in from your staff, and you take them with you. If you just say, "Right guys, this is a new thing, get on with it," you won't get support from your staff. And it's exactly the same with customers. You have to take them with you. And I think in many cases, some businesses are not doing that. They are slavishly following rules and regulations, implementing them badly, and making customers' lives a misery. I think Mallorca still has a bright future. It's got a few things going for it. First of all, it's an island, and our government recognises islands as regions now, and it does have an advantage over mainland destinations. Obviously, there is a natural border, being the sea, and people are either arrive by boat or by aircraft, and can be checked at the border to make sure that they don't have the virus, i.e. tested. In a mainland destination, it's very hard to do that because people can arrive by road or rail, etc. So that gives Mallorca a huge advantage. We must make sure that we try to provide the holiday as close to the one it used to be like, because that's what people want. And there is a particular thing that people are asking for when they're booking holidays. They're asking for which hotels have lots of space because they want to try and social distance. So we have to try and make sure that as much space is available in the hotel as possible for people to spread out. So it might be that if there's lots and lots of people staying in a hotel, close the tennis courts for the summer. Convert areas where people can have sunbeds and let them spread out, because that's what people want. And if I may just go back to the beach question, yeah, I think we've got to make sure the beaches are as normal as possible. Beaches benefit, obviously, because they're outdoor, and being outdoor is supposed to be safer than being indoors. You can't transmit the virus as easily. Now, there's an Italian destination that put perspex panels up on the beach to separate people. That's insane. There was a mainland Spanish destination that put a protocol in place where you had to book your slot on the beach. You could only have it for half a day. You couldn't take food onto the beach. There was no bins on the beach. You couldn't, if you wanted a drink or you wanted to get something to eat, you had to leave the beach. That's not a holiday, that's like being in prison. And we have to be very careful that we don't overreact to these measures that are put in place. I must stress, people want a holiday to be as normal as possible. And when people, tourist boards, politicians, hoteliers, whoever, come up with rules, please, please test them with real people that go on real holidays, that live real lives, because they will tell you whether they think the rules and regulations are sensible, reasonable measures, or just insane ideas that will turn people off.
Si te parece, Manolo, vamos a lanzar algunas de las preguntas que también nos están llegando a través del chat, a través de las redes sociales. Son muchas las personas que desde todos los puntos del mundo nos están haciendo preguntas. Una de ellas va dirigida a Ian, de TUI. ¿Qué es necesario hacer en Baleares para que vuelvan los turistas? Pregunta.
Repite.
¿Qué es necesario hacer en Baleares para que vuelvan los turistas? Preguntan.
Bueno, yo creo que de lo que todos hemos hablado durante la mañana, no solamente en las últimas ponencias, ¿no? Hay que tener, obviamente, el virus controlado a nivel local, obviamente a nivel europeo. Hay que tener unos protocolos que están, bueno, que son los mismos para todo el mundo. Y realmente desde la isla de Mallorca, como hemos hablado antes y Carlos lo ha dicho, hay que tener una promoción muy correcta y muy adecuada para realmente Mallorca está puesto en la mapa en una manera muy importante y muy positiva.
Muchas gracias. Esta pregunta va para Steve, de jet2com. Nos preguntan, ¿cómo creéis que el Brexit y el COVID va a afectar al presupuesto de los ciudadanos británicos? ¿Hay números o estadísticas?
We don't, and this is a problem with the pandemic and the understandably absolute focus on the pandemic, but in many cases it's been at the expense of other things. And one of the issues that has not had much exposure in the UK is Brexit, because all people have talked about is COVID. It looks like relations are getting a little bit better between the UK government and the European government, and I hope that they can very much come to agreements on some of the points that are contentious. Personally, I don't think it's in the interest of either the EU or the British government to be too stubborn in these negotiations. We will be lucky, Brexit aside, to come out of the COVID pandemic with just a recession. We could come out out with a depression along the similar lines to 1929, and none of us want that. And a hard Brexit will not only be bad for the UK, it will be bad for Europe too. To answer your question in terms of budgets, Brexit may have an impact on people's budgets, but we can't really quantify that would be until the negotiations have finished and we know the impact of any rules that are put in place. There have been various surveys that indicate even if it's not a hard Brexit, but let's call it a medium Brexit, the UK would still be in a reasonably strong position. The biggest threat that we face is continued lockdown for COVID. That, I think, is a bigger risk than anything that may come from Brexit. If we don't find a cure for 5 years, what are we going to do? Quarantine for 5 years? There certainly won't be any airlines and tour operators around. There'll be no businesses open. You want to get a sandwich? Oh, sorry, all the shops have closed. We have to make sure that governments take a measured approach to combating COVID. There is only so long we can carry on like we are, and then economies will collapse. People will starve, people will be homeless, and the consequences of a continued very severe reaction will be catastrophic, and it'll make Brexit look like nothing. So I think the whole of Europe will be constrained for money next year. I think every budget will be tight, but I think a much bigger risk than Brexit is a continued severe lockdown owing to COVID. I hope that answers your question.
Gracias, Steve. Tenemos otra pregunta también dirigida hacia ti. Nos preguntan, el diario The Guardian dice que el 10% de la población del Reino Unido podría ser testada cada semana. Preguntan, ¿podría ser una medida para mejorar el turismo inglés hacia España?
Well, I hope that 10% of the UK population can be tested each week, but at the moment that's about 6 million people per week. And as far as I'm aware, we've struggled getting anywhere near those numbers. I think it's probably closer to 6 people per week. Yes, testing would help massively, but we have to have regular testing. I'm at home at the moment, quarantining because a member of my family has been diagnosed with COVID. I was tested 2 days ago and I don't have it. But 10 minutes after testing, I could have caught it. So the test was valid until I got home again. So the trick is to test people regularly until we find a vaccine or until things improve. People will need testing regularly because you're only as good as your last test. And it just tells you at a point in time whether the virus is detectable. You may have the virus in its very, very early days and it may be undetectable. But testing isn't a panacea. There are many false positives from testing and there are many false negatives from testing, which means that the results aren't 100% accurate anyway. But I would agree with the question posed by The Guardian that testing is certainly a step in the right direction. But as with anything, it may be the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles. There is a lot of other things that we need to do. It would be a step in the right direction. If we could test a tenth of the population every week, 6 million people, I would be over the moon. If I was allowed to see other people, I would throw a party, but I'll have it on my own. Thank you.